Let's take a minute to review some of the things we need to do to ensure we've done a proper pre-trip inspection of our truck. First, when you walk up to it, take a good look at the front of it. Air shield, windshield, hood, grill, and bumper. And look underneath to see if there are any puddles of fluid underneath that shouldn't be there. Then, if your facility requires it, the next thing would be to open the hood and check under the hood. If you are required to check under the hood at your location, unlatch the hood and walk around the front to open it. When you do, be sure that you use both hands to open the hood so you reduce the stress on your arms and shoulders. When you have the hood open, walk around to the side and look into the engine compartment. The first thing you'll want to do is check the engine oil. Be sure you do that before you start the engine so you get an accurate reading. And when you replace the dipstick, be sure that it is secured in place. The next thing you'll want to do is check the radiator reservoir tank to make sure you have plenty of coolant, and never take the cap off of a hot radiator. Then check all of the hoses that are under the hood and visible, as well as the belts and the steering components. While you have the hood open, check the pitman arm on the steering gearbox, drag link, springs, air hoses, shock absorbers, front axle. Make sure all the parts are there and secure. When you're finished checking under the hood of the truck, walk back around the front to close the hood, making sure that it is securely latched. And then we'll move on to the cab. The next thing we'll do is climb into the tractor, using 3 points of contact, of course, and we'll look at the things that we need to check when we're inside the cab of the truck. First, check your fire extinguisher. Make sure it's properly charged, that the safety pin is in place, and that it's secured into its mounting bracket. Next is to check your emergency triangles. Open the box, make sure they're actually in there, and that they appear to be in serviceable condition. In the paperwork pouch, we need to have insurance card, registration, fuel tax permit, hazardous materials registration. We are required by law to have the emergency response guidebook. The company requires us to have an accident kit, so we have paperwork to write down information in case we get tangled up with somebody, and your disposable camera. Start the truck. Check that my oil pressure gauge came up right away, which it did, and my voltmeter came up, so those systems are working. The rest of my instruments indicate what I would expect them to indicate. Turn on my lights, turn on my four-way flashers, check my windshield washers and wipers. I don't know if you can see that. Check my horns. If you can keep that on film, that'd be good. And then go outside and check the outside of the truck. So let's start the outside process at the front of the truck. We'll look for the headlights to be working, look for the turn signals on both sides and parking lights to work, the marker lights across the top of the cab, the clearance lights on the top of the corners of the trailer. So let's make our way around to the left front wheel of the truck. On the way, we'll check the fender mounted spot mirror, make sure the brackets are secure, the mirror is tight and stays where it belongs, and then we'll look at the wheel and tire. So we're going to check the tire for any damage in the sidewall, check the tread for depth and wear, check the rim for any cracks or breaks, check all the lugs to make sure that they're tight, check the hub to make sure it isn't leaking, and move on. Working our way back along the side of the cab, we're going to check the mirror to be sure the bracket's secure, the mirror itself is clean, that the turn signal on the side of the tractor is working as it's supposed to, that the battery box cover is secure and held down with both latches, and then look under the cab to make sure that there are no hoses, wires, or pieces of equipment hanging loose under the tractor. And moving around to the back of the cab, we want to be sure that the air hoses and the electrical line are not rubbing against the back of the cab, that the glad hands are secure, the safety latches are engaged, as well as the safety catch on the electrical line. Want to make sure that the handle, the climbing handle, is secure, that the hoses aren't rubbing on the catwalk itself is secure, and the steps to climb up onto the catwalk are also secure. While we're back here, let's take a look at the muffler support bracket, the diagonal brace, as well as the bracket on the far side of the truck that supports the muffler to make sure there's no breaks, cracks, or missing bolts. And moving to the front of the trailer, let's take a look underneath. Make sure that any tire chains mounted on the tractor are secured with pins or tie downs of some sort, that the fifth wheel and the fifth wheel plate are tight together with no daylight, that the latch handle is all the way in, the safety indicator is down. And while we're here, let's take a look at the spring hanger, spring, brake components, anything that we can see under there to be sure they are also intact. And turning our attention to the drive tires, make sure there's no debris or anything stuck in between them. Check both tires for tread depth and even wear, and that they both seem to be appropriately inflated. And once again, we're going to check the tire for damage, the rim for cracks or breaks, the lug nuts to make sure they're all tight, and the hub to make sure it's not leaking. And moving around the back of the tractor, we're going to make sure that we have our mud flap intact. And then we have to actually crawl under the trailer to check a few things. Make sure that our turn lights and our parking lights on the back of the tractor are working. If the state issues a rear license plate, that it's there. And then we're going to have to check the fifth wheel. To do that, we're probably going to need our flashlight. And then the most critical part of ensuring that your fifth wheel is properly latched is to look into the crotch of the fifth wheel, ensure that the jaw has captured the pin and the latch is engaged. And moving back along the trailer, we're going to check for any lights, clearance lights there might be at the top of the trailer, that the side of the trailer is in generally good condition, no obvious new damage. Check the landing gear is cranked all the way up and the feet are secure. The landing gear handle is secured in its cradle. We're going to move back to the placards to make sure that they are correct for the load that you have on the trailer, and that the trailer side light works in both parking light mode and turn light mode. And moving to the trailer running gear, we want to make sure that the hoses going to the sliding tandems are all well supported and not hanging down. We want to make sure that the locking handle is in and that the pins that engage the sliding tandems are latched both front and back. Look at the right side running gear inside of the tires, that the suspension system and the brake system are all intact. And then turn our attention to the near side tires, make sure there's no debris in between them, check the tread for wear and depth, make sure they're properly inflated, and move back to the rear. And on our way to the rear, we're going to stop here and check the tires for damage on the sidewalls, the rims for breaks and cracks, lug nuts for tightness and security, and the hubs for any oil that might be leaking on them, both front and rear. And while we're there, let's take a look at the suspension system, the spring hanger, and so on that we can see between those tandems on this side of the trailer. And going around the corner of the trailer, we're going to check that our mud flap is there and secure, and that our marker light is working, clean, and visible. And moving to the back of the trailer, let's first take a look at the top to make sure our marker lights are working, and we have the reflective tape that's required up there, that both the door cables are intact and have some tension. If we're taking the load out of the yard, we need to make sure we have either a lock or a seal on the door latch. If the trailer you're assigned is supposed to be empty, take a quick look inside to be sure that in fact it is. Beyond that, we want to make sure that all of our lights are working on the rear of the trailer, and that we have placards that are correct for the load, that we have a license plate and the license plate light intact, and that our reflective tape on both the ICC bar and the door is there. Then let's take a look at the suspension system on the rear axle while we're here. From here, we can get a really good look at the springs and suspension components as well as the brake components that we can check while we're looking at the rear axle of the trailer. And moving up along the right side of the trailer is pretty much a repeat of what we did on the left side. Going to check our marker light and our mud flap. We're going to check our tires for tread depth and wear, make sure nothing's in between the tires, that they're properly inflated. No damage in the sidewall. We're going to look at the wheels again for cracks or breaks. We're going to look at the lug nuts to make sure they're tight and that the hubs are intact and that there's no oil leaking from those. Going to take a look at the latching pins for the sliding tandems, both rear and front, to make sure they are engaged on this side. Look at the suspension system parts we can see between the tandems on the left side. And then we're going to take a look at the far side of the trailer underneath there, make sure that the suspension system components, brake components are in good shape. Generally inspect the side of the trailer to make sure there is no new or significant damage, that our placards are correct for the load, that the mid-trailer light on the right side is working both in marker and in turn light mode. Make sure the dollies on this side are all the way up and that they are secure, and that on the tractor our mud flap is intact, our drive tires are properly inflated. Make sure there's no debris between them. Check the tread for wear and depth. The sidewall of the tire, wheels, rim, and lug nuts, hub once again. Clearance light on the right front top corner of the trailer. And then we find a fuel tank on this side of the tractor we didn't have on the other side. We want to make sure that we have fuel, so we inspect that. And then return the fuel cap, make sure it is on and secure. Make sure the hanger brackets for the fuel tank are all there and secure. And take a look at the exhaust pipe. Make sure it's secure, that there's no cracks or breaks or missing bolts or parts. Look under the cab to make sure there's no wires or hoses or anything hanging loose that shouldn't be. And then the right steering tire, check for tread depth, sidewall integrity, the wheel, lug nuts, and the hub once again, as we did before. And we're going to take a parts on the right side, which we didn't check earlier. Make sure that everything we can see is in good shape. Check our fender-mounted mirror for integrity. Make sure it's tight and doesn't move. That our side mirror is also tight and secure and in good shape. And we're coming down the home stretch. You should be able to complete a thorough pre-trip inspection of your unit in about 6 to 8 minutes. And if you check all of the things that we talked about on this video, you will eliminate the vast majority of safety and compliance issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. And remember, at New Penn, we want you to punch in for work, have a safe and productive day, and return home to your family happy and healthy.